And we starting off with something that has had the internet in a frenzy since it's been announced or since it has been proposed, I guess. The 3-2-1 draft lottery reform, the anti-tanking situation that the NBA is thinking about putting into place. We will see if that's going to come into effect as they wait to vote on May 28th. But again, this came out yesterday unexpectedly. We knew that they were working on something, but I remember seeing a tweet and it all kind of unraveling at once from Shams and just seeing everybody's constant reaction. And since then, all the way up to now, when I drove here, I was hearing people talk about it. A lot of opinions, a lot of interesting things. But before we get into those opinions and my opinions, let's break down exactly what the 3-2-1 lottery proposal is. So, what we would be doing with this is we would expand the draft lottery from 14 teams to 16 teams. Teams that don't qualify for the playoffs or play-in tournament but stay out of the regulation zone, which is the bottom three teams, which is again 4 through 10, they will receive 3 lottery balls each, which would give them an 8.1% chance of winning the lottery. So the main thing here is again the relegation zone, which I think is an incredible moniker that we're going to hear a lot on social media and just in talking heads and talking points. The relegation zone, the bottom 3 teams in the entire NBA, they have now penalized teams for being that bad, which again is the whole point of the anti-taking situation. Again, teams with a bottom 3 record, the relegation zone would just have 2 lottery balls compared to the 3 for the 4 to 10 team range, which would give them a 4.5% odds of winning the overall lottery. But they would have a floor of the 12th pick, while the rest of the 13 lottery teams could fall as far as the 16th pick. So there, with the relegation zone, you would have less chances of winning the overall lottery, still not impossible, and you would have a chance of falling, but the lowest you would be able to fall is a 12 seed in comparison to the other teams that could fall as low as 16. And then we have the ninth and the 10th playing seeds in each conference. They will receive 2 lottery balls each, while the losers of the 7-8 game will receive 1 lottery ball, which is a 2.7% chance at the number 1 overall pick. I know it's a lot. I hope y'all can keep up with me. And no team would be able to win a top pick in consecutive years or be able to win 3 consecutive top 5 picks. Teams also would not be able to protect picks in the 12 to 15 slots going forward when we talk about trades and, all the protections and things like that. And then last but not least, if this was to be approved by the owners by May 28th, this would come into effect in 2027 and only run through 2029. Now, again, I understand that it's a lot to take in, but I'm sure at this point, a lot of y'all have heard or read and kind of get a grasp of it yourself. And then before I give my opinion and my thoughts, it is important to mention what Commissioner Adam Silver had to say in a competition committee call. He said we should have a system where you should hate to lose. It shouldn't be a badge of honor. Losing should be uncomfortable, which I appreciate Commissioner Adam Silver for that statement because it is true. Now, my thoughts. Initially, I had the mindset that a lot of people online or a lot of people that are seeing this are going to have, where it's almost impossible to completely stop tanking. I don't think this solves everything, but I do think it creates it a little bit more harder. I think tanking got extremely sophisticated, starting with the trust the process, Philadelphia 76ers and Sam Hinkie. And throughout that, or since then, we've seen teams continue to just get super savvy with the ways that they're doing. I mean, the Jazz have technically found a way where they can still play guys, right? So nobody's sitting out, and you don't have to worry about the NBA fining you for making guys sit out. And we'll just have our guys play heavy minutes in the first half, and then they won't play much in the second half, and we will find ways to sophisticatedly lose and tank on purpose. Now, there is an argument of people saying the bottom teams are supposed to be rewarded with the best chance of getting a top tier player, especially because of these small market teams. And some teams are at the bottom of the conference or the league, not because they're trying to lose, but because they are just not that good. But I think this rule now makes it to where you have to have a good front office. You have to be savvy enough to get trades and to win. And we will see more teams buying. And I think the biggest thing for me is as somebody who has to cover the NBA for work and a job, which is an honor and a blessing to be a part of and to have the opportunity to do so. This was probably one of the first years that I won't lie. I'll be completely honest on this platform. It was tough in the second half to find interest and to find talking points to bring to shows every single day. We do numbers on the board, what, 4 times a week, almost 5 times a week. Then I got to do Tee It Up. Kenny and myself also do YouTube and we make guest appearances on other podcasts. And when you talk about trying to find things to talk about from the All-Star break to April, right before the playoffs, it got hard. It got hard. It was a lot of nights in the group chat where it's like, what are we going to talk about tomorrow? What is something that can be intriguing? What is something that is going to, catch people's attention? How could we find some excitement? Even here on Tee It Up, there was plenty of times where it's like, okay, what do I want to talk about? What's interesting? And the thing that saved us, I believe, is the fact that producer Christian is super knowledgeable and has interest in college basketball. And me and him were able to just use March Madness as kind of a turning point. And this is not necessarily an NBA centric podcast. So we can go and talk about the draft. We can bring on scouts. We could talk about the NCAA tournament. But without that, I think it would have been a very tough spot for Tee It Up in the NBA universe. And from a fan's perspective, I can only imagine how that is. And there's been another conversation around the basketball communities where you got fans of teams in each city paying hard-earned money to go watch certain players or to take children to these games, and you're kind of getting a bad product. And so you got people not wanting to tune in to watch. You got people not probably want to spend their money, or when they do spend their money, they don't feel like they're getting the bang for their buck, and it just creates a poor product for the NBA. A lot of people have issues already with this. I think we should applaud the NBA for trying to come up with something. I think we have to let things actually get into effect and have an attempt to play out before we can just crucify a proposal that we haven't even seen come into play. And then the best thing about this for anybody that is super against it is that the NBA is saying even if this does get approved, it's only going to be from 2027 to 2029. So it might start off as a hit. It may be the best thing smoking. And then the last 2 years, 2028, 2029, it may not be good, and we're able to pivot, change, and reassess it, right? And I think that, to me, should be applauded and championed by the league. They are trying to fix certain issues. They are trying to find ways for the regular season to have value and to have anticipation and, just make it worth watching. There are a lot of people in the community that I've talked to that was just completely out of the NBA for the last month or so because there was not that much to keep up with. And we even talked about it on the podcast because I heard Charles Barkley talk about it when it comes to the playoffs. Some of the teams are hard to evaluate because it's almost like win inflation is what we called it on numbers on the board, where you have we have about 3 teams with 60 losses this season. And it's like you have some good teams that look great because they just beat up on a bunch of teams that are purposely trying to lose basketball games. And so it makes it extremely hard to evaluate. You got young players who are only in their second or third year and not playing games or not getting the reps that they need to take the next step in their game because you have a franchise that is scared that those players are good enough to win the basketball games. You got guys signing 10-day contracts from the G League, and then immediately that night or the next day, they're jumping into an NBA game and playing 38 minutes. 38 minutes. And so now I believe we'll have a better product on a 82-game basis. We have the excitement of the top of the year. We have the in-season tournament, and then you have the trade deadline, and then you have All-Star weekend. You do have the seeding implications, right? That always creates some type of second half buzz. But now you'll have those bottom teams also trying to put their best foot forward towards the end of the year because they'll play to try to win an extra game so that they can be in that 4 through 10 range to get the 3 lottery balls and avoid being at the bottom 3. And more competitive play towards the end of the season and bringing more meaningful basketball only helps the business and the association. And that's all you can really ask for. I also think, to some of the other people's points, tanking won't be officially or completely removed. There will be a portion of the season, which I think will be the middle part, where we will see teams sophisticatedly tank, is what I like to call it. So you'll see a team at the beginning of the season trying to figure out who they are, and they're going to play their best basketball. But I do think once we get to December, from December to probably All-Star, you'll see some tanking-esque type of lineups or situations. And then at the end of the season, those teams will then just play their best to avoid the bottom three by 1 or 2 games. Right. And so you won't completely escape tanking, but you do have a form of some type of competitive basketball. Again, will this be the best idea? Will this save the NBA? Will this completely get rid of tanking? No, but it will improve the product, or should, and potentially could. And I think it's worth allowing it to come in, have its way, and seeing what it is before we completely write it off. There is this thing in my mind, though, I will say to end this. How many teams will be afraid to take the risk of just being a bottom three? I think that's going to be the thing. If the first year we have a bottom three team still win the lottery, then I think we may start seeing teams say, hey, you know what? Like, it's still worth, like, two balls ain't as many as three, obviously, but we still have a decent enough chance to win it all. So flatten odds, 16 lottery teams, no consecutive number 1 overall picks, and no top 3 picks or top 5 picks in 3-year stretches. I think those are some of the big changes. People brought up the Boston Celtics. They probably wouldn't have Jason Tatum if these things were in play way back then. But again, something to keep our eyes on and monitor. I do think and anticipate this being approved by May 28th. But yeah, hopefully it comes in and does what we need to bring up some of the competitive play in our game. Because again, it was very tough for me in the second half of the season. We have playoff basketball talk, some college basketball stuff, and much more.
Hit subscribe for more news, highlights, and analysis from the NBA and NBC.